so much for being here. My name is Erin Kenny. I am the Global Coordinator of the United Nations Spotlight Initiative to End Violence Against Women and Girls. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome you to Spotlight Initiative's side event at the 11th session of the Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, Sustaining Progress Toward Eliminating Violence Against Women and Girls through Enhanced Economic Opportunity. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Spotlight Initiative. Spotlight Initiative is a high-impact effort of the UN Secretary General. It brings together the UN system, government, and civil society. It is the world's largest targeted effort to end all forms of violence against women and girls. It was launched in 2017 with a seed investment of 500 million euros from the European Union. And it represents an unprecedented global effort to invest in gender equality as a precondition and driver for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Since its launch over the past 7 years in more than 25 countries across 5 regions, but really its largest investment was here in Africa, Spotlight Initiative has employed a uniquely comprehensive whole of society, whole of government approach that addresses all key drivers of violence against women and girls with transformational results. With the initiative's support between 2019 and 2023, 548 laws and policies targeting violence against women and girls were strengthened or passed. Over 50 countries institutionalized efforts to end violence against women and girls by strengthening national action plans. Nearly 6 million men and boys engaged in dialogue on positive masculinity and nonviolent conflict resolution. And over 3 million women and girls accessed essential services, including in fragile contexts. In its second phase, the initiative is expanding its universal reach, sustaining and scaling up the progress that has been made to end violence against women and girls, to accelerate progress across the 2030 agenda more broadly. This includes a stronger focus on the intersection between violence against women and women's economic self-sufficiency. This year's Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development comes at a time of urgently rising needs and declining political and financial support for ending violence against women and girls. Recent cuts to ODA threaten progress made toward women's equality in the region, an essential driver of sustainable development. This morning, we heard about amazing progress made across the region, including in heavily crisis-impacted contexts. But the messages were clear. The scale of need is outpacing available resources, and approaches to date have been inadequate. Our piecemeal efforts, laced with competition and plagued by inadequate coordination, have left space for backlash to grow and for regressive viewpoints that devalue and demean women and girls to dominate our discourse. As we build toward the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, we will orient today's event on the current global political and financial landscape in which we are advancing work to end violence against women and girls in the context of Africa. By examining the latest learnings and exploring strategic approaches for increasing resources, we will further build this critical community to ensure work can continue and even expand in this financially constrained time. To kick off today's side event, I am pleased to share a video that illustrates Spotlight Initiative's impact on the lives of women and girls in the communities we serve. Copies of our impact report, Unprecedented, A Pathway for Ending Violence Against Women and Girls, are available for download at the QR code on the flyers found at your seats. Let's play the video.
Violence against women and girls is the most pervasive human rights violation in the world. Yet it's completely preventable. A problem of this magnitude requires an ambitious, equally global solution. Enter Spotlight Initiative, the United Nations high-impact initiative to eliminate violence against women and girls. The initiative brings together governments, the United Nations, civil society organizations, survivors, and experts to deliver high-impact solutions, saving millions of women and girls' lives across the globe. Our comprehensive approach addresses all key drivers of violence: Our model has been shown to be up to 90% more effective than traditionally siloed programming. Since 2019, Spotlight Initiative's investments across more than 25 countries ensured that the overall conviction rate for gender-based violence doubled across 13 countries. 548 laws or policies were signed or strengthened to end violence against women and girls. $195 million was delivered to civil society organizations who have reported having greater influence and agency. Close to 3 million women and girls accessed gender-based violence services. 6 million men and boys were educated on positive masculinity, respectful family relationships, and nonviolent conflict resolution. And 50 countries strengthened their national action plans to eliminate violence against women and girls. Our work will prevent 21 million women from experiencing violence by the end of 2025. By becoming a $1 billion fund, we project we'll prevent violence for more than 70 million women across 60 countries. We know our model works. We have the results to prove it, but we must ensure our impact is sustained and magnified. Join us and support our efforts to ensure every woman and girl everywhere can live a life free from violence.
The transformative results we have just witnessed would not be possible without a whole-of-society approach that coalesces and unites diverse stakeholders around ending violence against women and girls. We will now hear from our distinguished speakers who will attest to the significance of this work. To start us off, please join me in welcoming what we see as the most integral part of Spotlight Initiative, our civil society partners. I would like to invite Dora, a member of the Spotlight Initiative Global Civil Society Reference Group, to take the floor. Dora.
Thank you, Erin. Good evening, and good evening, people online. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, welcome to Kampala. Welcome to our city. It's an honor and privilege to stand before you today to address a critical issue that affects countless lives of women and girls. It's a pervasive phenomenon. It's not only a women's issue, it's our societal crisis, violence against women. And today, we gather to share its intersection with economic opportunity or the lack of it. I am Dora Chichoncho Musinguzi. I'm a middle-aged woman in my country here, Uganda, but also representing women on the continent. I am an activist, but I'm also a practitioner. I'm an advisor on the What Works To program to end violence against women with Raising Voices. I have the opportunity to take the podium today because of who I represent, the Global Reference Group of Civil Society of the EU Spotlight Initiative. We love to call the Spotlight whole of government, whole of UN, whole of society. And the civil society is where we come in. And we are glad to have played a role from where it's been in Spotlight 1.0 to 2.0, where we are and where we hope to be. Now more than ever, ladies and gentlemen, we need each other. Now more than ever, the tide is turning. Backlash is rising against women and girls globally. Rights and gains are being rolled back. This deep-rooted expertise of women and girls need to be brought to the fore. So the whole of government, the whole of civil society, the whole of UN gives us an opportunity to be here with you. And when we speak, it's not one voice. It's all of us coming in this room and saying, please acknowledge that if we are going to work, we are going to work differently. If we are going to fund, we are going to fund differently. If we are going to collaborate, we've never needed it as we need it now. It is one ecosystem. What is happening globally is impacting whose rights gets diminished, who gets violated, and who gets underfunded. The need continues to grow. The WHO statistic of 1.3 is not changing. We've just come back from the CSW. We had hoped for the news that 30 years down the road, it is probably 1 out of 2. It is still 1 out of 3 women globally continue to face violence against women. We also heard that the violence is growing in many ways. In streets where men are getting enriched, where trade is thriving, women continue to be violated. The internet, the media, the new way of being now, where everybody gets a chance to enrich themselves, it is a place women are dying. They are finding their killers on the internet, and they cannot get a trade from the internet. When we talk about human trafficking, a trade that has over $500 billion annually, it is thriving on the backs of women. All forms of violence are thriving in the human trafficking, very lucrative business space. Wars are growing. Trade overseas is thriving around the wars that are surrounding us. But we need to change this. We need to find ways women can earn a living and be able to be safer everywhere, at home, in streets, and in workplaces. We know the evidence is there, we know what works. That when women have an opportunity to earn, they will leave abusive families. They will get financial independence. They will be empowered when they get expanded job opportunities. We need to keep our girls in school. We hope that the conversation we hold here this evening will hold us around those key pillars of ensuring that women get out of poverty, but also women get out of violence. Thank you so much.
Dora, thank you for your steadfast efforts to ensure that civil society remains at the heart of this initiative. And as you said, you had a little slip up there. You called us the EU Spotlight Initiative, but it actually was kind of true because we wouldn't be here were it not for the European Union. The European Union had a vision when they launched the Spotlight Initiative, when they seeded this initiative with 500 million in the initial investment. And we really wouldn't be here today in the world, but also in Uganda, were it not for the European Union, whose faith in multilateralism and the United Nations system has enabled us to deliver transformative programming across the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ms. Carolina Hedstrom, Head of Cooperation of the European Union Delegation in Uganda.
Thank you very much, Erin, for that very useful background, and thank you, Dora, for your inspiring remarks that explain why this initiative is so important to us all. It's a real honor for me to represent the European Union at this event focusing on the Spotlight Initiative, which represents the European Union's largest global investment in combating violence against women and girls. And today's event is a reminder of the urgent need to sustain and accelerate our collective efforts to eliminate violence against women and girls, which affects not only the well-being of individuals, but also hinders the social and economic development of our communities. The European Union remains firm in our commitment to eliminate violence against women and girls and to promote women's economic empowerment. And as the founding partner and largest donor to the Spotlight Initiative, with, as you mentioned, an initial financial contribution of 500 million euros, the European Union leads through funding, political influence, and robust partnerships. And it's really this idea about bringing everybody together and coalescing around a common objective that we wanted to promote with this. However, since the Spotlight initiative started, the last few years have shown that broadening financial support beyond the EU's initial investment has been more challenging than we had hoped. We have seen some good examples, and you will hear from the ambassador of the Netherlands shortly about the very welcome contribution of the Netherlands as part of a Team Europe approach. But overall, while the initial EU contribution of seed funding to Spotlight was intended to spur additional donor contributions, this outcome has yet to fully materialize. And at a time when we know the situation of the world, the political and financial situation, we can expect to see reduced donor funding across the board. At that time, the ambition to coalesce funding around a clear common objective is even more important than ever. And looking ahead, as the Spotlight initiative aims to actually increase its reach, involving more diverse financing sources, including the private sector and IFIs, we have to step up our engagement through greater donor outreach and innovative financing models. So we have to adapt to this new situation by looking at integrating gender priorities across broader policies, ensuring better transparency and cost effectiveness, and focusing on performance-driven frameworks that can attract more private investors. We also call upon national governments in Africa to work towards meeting their international and regional commitments to promote the rights of women and girls. For example, the Maputo Protocol to increase budget allocations to social sectors. We believe that a combination of domestic and international public and private financing is essential for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and the objectives of the Spotlight initiative. And from the European Union side, we are committed to working with all our partners to identify and support innovative solutions to sustain and accelerate these results that we've seen. But we need your support, and that's why I'm so happy to be here today, to be able to engage with representatives of various stakeholders. Through sharing best practices, being honest about what works well or not, and engaging new partners, and in particular by ensuring that the voices of women's organizations and civil society are central to all our actions, we hope that the Spotlight initiative can be a catalyst for continuing to drive transformative change. So I therefore very much look forward to this afternoon's event as an opportunity to hear your constructive and hopefully innovative ideas about our common way forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Excellency, for those incredible insights and for your steadfast partnership, both in launching Spotlight and your ongoing investments, including, really importantly, in Uganda and with the very soon to be launched and recently signed commitment in the Africa region as well. So I really appreciate that. Before we turn to the next speaker, can I ask our ICT support just to quickly pop on the Zooms? We have a number of people joining online. I'm going to ask them to quickly wave at all of you. So we do a little bit of cross-global connection here. We have some friends around the globe who wanted to check in, who wish they could be here. So we thought we would just have them all say hello, if we can. We can toggle between screens. If not, we can go to the next speaker and then, yeah, we're good. Folks online, can you just pop your videos on really quickly and just say hello? It's too early for them, too early for videos? Are videos disabled? Maybe. Maybe we're going to assume videos are disabled. Anyway, as you can see, we have a number of people online who just all wanted to say hello, including a heart, a thumbs up. The emojis are taking the place of what I'm sure are gorgeous Monday morning and Monday afternoon. Oh, there we go. Hi, everyone. Hi, friends.
There they are. Hi, everyone. Great to see everyone. Amazing. All right.
Great. Just so you know that there's some people online who are really excited to be participating in this as well. All right, moving on to our next speaker. I'm really excited to introduce the Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Uganda, Ambassador Frederique Quispel, to take the floor. Ambassador.
Hello, everyone, and hi to everybody online as well. It is the end of the day, and I had 3 minutes to speak, and my speech is way longer than that. So I thought, let's cut back to the basics, if that's okay with everyone. Keep you nice and fresh, and the debate will start. The panel discussion will start shortly, which is, of course, the most important. But it gives me the opportunity to just make a couple of remarks that hopefully will come back in the panel discussion. But let's see, we'll see about that. First of all, thank you so much for the Spotlight Initiative, to the people of the Spotlight Initiative, and to the EU. We are an active partner to Spotlight here in Uganda, but it is thanks to the EU that this came off the ground with such a tremendous input of the EU, financing of the EU, for which we are very grateful. And I think this really shows what Team Europe can do, led by our EU colleagues, but with the individual member states also part of it. So first, I want to express my thanks for that. And for me, I am the ambassador of the Netherlands here in Uganda. The Netherlands itself also has a lot of lessons to learn, so I hope that the Ugandan ambassador to the Netherlands will explain what we are going through in the Netherlands. I'll focus a little bit on what I see in Uganda. And I see enormous strides that have been made on the legal aspect of things. When you look at the legal framework in Uganda, it is really, really well organized. And that is very, very important. I really commend Uganda for that. But when it comes to the legal aspect, we also have to keep in mind that 70% of the criminal cases prosecuted by the Ugandan Director of Public Prosecutions are gender-based violence cases. 70%. That is a lot. So imagine you're a woman in this concerns you. We also have to make sure that these women get access to justice. They're supported, they're not alone, and we have to make sure that probably if 70% of the cases are sexual gender-based violence cases, then we can be certain there's way many more cases out there. So that access to justice aspect is key, and I hope that is something that will come back in the panel discussion. Just saying. And the Netherlands is very supportive of these kinds of interventions. And secondly, I think in Uganda, which is very important, is the social norms that are out there. And it's very difficult to talk about somebody else's culture, so I won't. But I do think it's very important to make sure that you partner with the right people on the ground. Here in Uganda, the importance of religious leadership, of cultural leadership is enormous. So we have to make sure when we talk about civil society that we include these groups into the discussion, because they have a lot to say, they have a lot of influence, and they can do a lot of good if we make sure they're part of the discussion and part of the solution. And very often when I engage with cultural leaders, religious leaders, like I did this weekend when I was in the Southwest on an elevator launch of a wonderful NGO. It was actually, this started with the religious leaders working with local women organizations. So something I also think is very, very important. And what I also find very important is, indeed, it was mentioned by previous speakers, the real empowerment of women. Keep those girls in school as long as possible. Make sure that they can work. And my perfect example there, a little bit linked to the social norms, is one of my dear colleagues, a Ugandan colleague, who said to me, when I go back to the village, my uncles expect me to sit on the floor, but I paid for the chairs, so I'm not sitting on the floor. My favorite example ever, also something very important, I think. I hope this will add a little bit to the discussion. I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to add to the discussion in this way. I wish you a very, very good meeting, and please, it's an important topic, so let's all stay on board and awake, because we need to end gender-based violence. Thank you very much.
I'll remember that quote for a long, long time. It reminds me of the Shirley Chisholm quote around, if they don't invite you to the table, just bring a folding chair, which I think it's relevant. Thank you so much for those thoughtful and really, truly inspiring remarks. I mentioned already the real importance of our partnership with the African Union. We had a major program in partnership with them, funded by the European Union, that was in part of Spotlight 1.0. We've just launched another incredible program for 2.0, and I am so honored to be able to invite our next speaker from the African Union Commission, Dr. Olubusayo Akinola, the head of Social Welfare, Drug Control, and Crime Prevention Division, HHS, to the podium. Dr. Akinola.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So I also have 3 minutes, like a 10-page long statement. And also it's the end of the day, so I'll just keep it brief. On behalf of the African Union itself, I welcome everyone to this very important side event. And also on behalf of Our Excellency, the Commissioner for Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development of the African Union, Ambassador Amatwam Amo, I also welcome everyone. Addressing the intersection of gender-based violence and sustainable development is not only timely but imperative. And as we reflect on our collective progress towards achieving the Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, we must confront an enduring challenge, which is violence against women and girls, which continues to undermine social cohesion, impede economic growth, and violate fundamental human rights across our continent. Current data paints a sobering picture, and I'm sure we all know the data, so I will not be boring us with that. But the African Union has taken a resolute action to take these challenges by advancing a robust normative and institutional framework. And so we have the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, on the rights of women in Africa. That is the Maputo Protocol, remains a fundamental legal instrument mandating state parties to eliminate all forms of discrimination and violence against women and girls, including trafficking and different types of harmful traditional practices. We also have the age strategy for gender equality and women's empowerment, which prioritizes the eradication of violence against women. And this is one of our key pillars, the campaign to end child marriage and also female genital mutilation. So critically, the African Union acknowledges the intrinsic link between the economic empowerment of women and the reduction of their vulnerability to violence. We've heard this morning, yes, when a woman has a voice, she will be able to face any form of violence. And so, therefore, integrating a gender-responsive economic inclusion in our programming is not just an option, but a necessity. In this regard, we had Spotlight Initiative Phase 1, which is supported by our European Union, thank you, and the United Nations, has been instrumental to catalyze different national reforms and also to improve access to multi-sectoral services and amplify our survivor voices. And now, as we transition to Spotlight 2.0, our ambition is very clear: to scale up results, to close protection gaps, and also to address emerging threats, particularly in digital violence and economic exploitation. Spotlight 2.0 will emphasize inclusive economic pathways, particularly for marginalized women and girls, while investing in institutional accountability mechanisms and survivor-led monitoring. This next phase aims not to sustain the momentum only, but to also transform structural conditions that perpetuate violence. We deeply appreciate our development partners, particularly the EU, the UN, agencies, and all bilateral donors whose relentless commitment and strategic investment have reinforced our collective efforts. Your partnership has been pivotal in transforming policy into impactful action, and we look forward to building on this legacy. As we deliberate here today, let us reaffirm our resolute, a continent that is free of violence against women and girls is not only aspirational, it is achievable and it is urgent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akinola, for those excellent remarks and also for highlighting some of the really critical pressing issues that we need to start to unpack in the panel discussion. And I really appreciate that you also raised the issue of technology-facilitated violence, which I am hoping that we will start to explore as well, because I think that that's incredibly urgent for all of us to start to interrogate. Also, just deepest gratitude for your continued support to Spotlight Initiative and your partnership. And again, congratulations on the historic adoption of the Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls. Really huge milestone. Please join me in welcoming our next speaker. I just need to take a minute. Spotlight Initiative, we can only operate because we represent really the best of the UN system. We are a collaboration of 13 UN entities, and really what we try to do is take the best of the UN and weave it all together into a cohesive whole. To get Spotlight started, there were 4 UN agencies who really gave their blood, sweat, and tears to make this happen. UNDP, UN Women, UNFPA, and UNICEF. And I'm really happy that we have several of those organizations represented in this room, one of whom will be speaking next, and another whom will be on the panel. So let me introduce our next speaker. Dr. Matthias Naab, Director of the UNDP Regional Service Center for Africa. Please, I welcome you to the podium.
Thank you very much. And I'm delighted to be here. And let me also stand on existing protocols, recognizing their excellencies and colleagues on the podium there. And Erin, thank you very much for your leadership. I have a speech, so I'm going to read it as it is. Yes. I've been told 4 minutes. It is both an honor and a privilege to welcome you all today. I really take note of the 4 agencies that started this journey together. And so if I reference UNDP, other agencies, pardon me, because I want to be specific about examples. As we gather here today, we are reminded of our shared commitment to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its central promise of advancing gender equality and empowering women. First and foremost, I would like to take this opportunity to celebrate and commend the African Union and its member states for the timely adoption of the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls. I think they deserve a round of applause. And this was done just at the last summit, which took place in May. This historic milestone represents a pivotal moment in our collective journey towards achieving gender equality and safeguarding the rights of women and girls across the continent. The convention is not just a legal framework, it is a bold promise that reaffirms Africa's commitment to a future where women and girls can thrive with dignity, equality, and respect. There is some statistics that I want to just cite that will also be helpful in the plenary or panel discussion. We note that less than 1% of national government budgets are allocated to gender equality programs, and this is of these issues effectively. On a global scale, official development assistance for gender equality averages 4%. However, in Africa, this figure is significantly lower, with only about 2.5% of total ODA allocated to gender equality. I'm saying this because I think we need to do better, and we have our African Union here. We belong to member states, which belongs to member states, so we need to do better, and organizations such as ours can also help to do better. Colleagues, UNDP continues to support gender equality initiatives at both the regional and national levels. A few examples. In Nigeria, efforts are underway to explore the issuance of gender bonds to finance women-led enterprises. In Eswatini, A women and youth investment facility is being developed to enhance access to finance for women and youth entrepreneurs. Similarly, in the Republic of Congo, credit guarantee mechanisms are being explored to enhance financing for women-led small and medium-sized businesses. Additionally, through the Integrated National Financing Frameworks, INFFs, UNDP is assisting 18 countries in mainstreaming gender into their financing policies, processes, and systems. This support is helping unlock vital private sector funding for women's empowerment. These efforts not only ensure the integration of gender equality into financial systems, but also empower women economically across the region. Dear colleagues, as we deliberate today on sustaining progress towards eliminating violence against women and girls, we must recognize that genuine progress is unattainable without addressing the systemic violence that undermines women's empowerment and overall well-being. As you engage in your discussions, I would like to bring to your attention the following issues that resonate with our region and warrant your thoughtful consideration. 1, strengthening domestic resource mobilization with a focus on scaling innovative financing mechanisms and aligning national budgets with gender equality goals. 2, leveraging private sector partnerships to foster women's economic participation and drive systemic change for gender equality and safety across all sectors. And 3, developing flexible financing models to promptly address emerging violence against women and girls crisis while maintaining ongoing investment in prevention and response. I want to convey my sincere appreciation to the Embassy of the Netherlands, to CEDA, the World Bank, and all our development partners. And I would like to also take this opportunity to express our sincere gratitude to the European Union for its ongoing support through the Spotlight Initiative on ending violence against women. In closing, I reaffirm UNDP's continued commitment to advancing gender equality and women's empowerment in alignment with both Agenda 2063 and Agenda 2030. Let me say that Spotlight 2.0 will also receive the needed attention, and we look forward to doing more resource mobilization to support what the European Union has already put forward. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nab, and thank you for orienting us squarely in this moment and reaffirming also, because we're here to talk about the economic intersections that we face between the financial moment that we're in and violence and the Sustainable Development Goals, kind of the way that we need to also think creatively about how we're going to finance this and how we're going to sustain that financing, including around domestic resource mobilization. I'm really excited for our panel, and I know that we're all eager to get to the panel. It's going to be fantastic. But before we do that, I wanted to take a photo moment. I know some of you have to rush. So if you will just bear with me, just to have a photo with these incredible, can we give them a round of applause, our incredible speakers? Please don't go anywhere. We've got a fantastic panel coming. So we're gonna take a quick photo and then start our panel. So, my friends, we will now transition into our panel discussion. We will hear from esteemed panelists on their respective efforts to unlock sustainable and domestic financing to end violence against women and girls. As we heard from nearly every single one of our speakers, we know that there are rapid decreases in ODA, and yet we need to continue to identify instruments that will secure financing in support of ending violence against women and girls. That issue is not decreasing. Just confirming that, do we have all of our panelists? One, except for one. All right. All right. I think we're hoping that we will have someone from the government of Uganda joining us. My first question was going to be for them, but I will skip over that and I will go straight to Arlette, my friend from the African Union. We are witnessing significant, well, let me first introduce Arlette, sorry. Ms. Arlette Akinjene. Thank you. Is the Health and Wellbeing Program Associate with the Women, Gender, and Youth Directorate of the African Union Commission. Arlette, we are witnessing significant momentum within the African Union on gender equality and ending violence against women and girls. From the recent adoption of the AU's first ever Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls, to the new partnership with Spotlight Initiative under 2.0. Well, let's say the reaffirmed partnership. How is the African Union Commission coordinating continent-wide efforts to address violence against women and girls and leveraging alternative opportunities, partnerships, or financing to prioritize ending violence against women and girls within Agenda 2063? Arlette, over to you.
Thank you so much, Erin. Good afternoon, everyone. Maybe I should say good evening. Almost 6 p.m. So allow me to stand on the existing protocol and go straight into answering the question. And I think, as Erin just mentioned, really the fight against violence against women and girls requires collective effort from different groups. Here we're talking about policymakers, we're talking about development partners, CSOs, young people who actually make the biggest demographic of our continent, and other various stakeholders. So, and the truth is, all these groups really are leading efforts in the countries, within their mandate and capabilities. And to your question, how do we ensure that the work that they are doing is coordinated so that we can reach our common goal, which is the elimination of all forms of violence against women and girls, so that really women and girls can enjoy their rights. So I think for some context, in 2017, under the leadership of His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, the former AAC chairperson, the AU under the Women, Gender and Youth Directorate developed the AU framework on ending violence against women and girls. And this was really in response to some of the issues and points that you raised, Erin, because what we are seeing is that there was a lot of efforts to end violence against women and girls, but then we still saw a rise. We saw that violence against women and girls was still a pertinent issue on our continent. So we realized that there was therefore a need for a comprehensive and coordinated response to EVAWG on the continent. So under this framework, we've been able to put in place various efforts that I'm going to go through quickly. So the first one, on the institutional level, what we've done really is to ensure that we mobilize political commitment and action at the highest level of AU leadership and decision making. So we did that through the AU Presidential Initiative on Positive Masculinity in Leadership to End Violence Against Women and Girls. I know it's a long name, but I think most of the people may know this initiative as the AU High-Level Presidential Response to End Violence Against Women and Girls. So this initiative that is operationalized through the annual AU Men's Conference is led by the AU chairperson. So the current, the former, and the coming chairperson, the AU Circle of Champion on Positive Masculinity, AUC. So here we're talking about the current chairperson, the Office of the Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security, as well as the Women, Gender and Youth Directorate, and AULIN. So under this high-level presidential initiative, we've really seen as I mentioned, it's operationalized through the Men's Conference, which has led really to groundbreaking decisions such as the recently adopted AU Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls. And secondly, what we had to really reinforce partnerships and resource mobilization efforts to advance EVAWG efforts. And I think here Spotlight is a great example for this, because we recognize that our partners are doing tremendous work within their mandate, but it's also important that the partners are not working in silo, which is why we make sure or we appreciate coming together so that we can all work together to ensure that we are all achieving the aspirations of Agenda 2063. So what's important is that the partners can still deliver within their mandate, but also still be able to contribute to AU's Agenda 2063 aspirations. And I think in efforts to reinforce resource mobilization efforts, we cannot state enough the need for domestic financing, as you were mentioning, and this is also on a priority for AU heads of state who have called for the need for domestic financing, but also ensuring that member states dedicate certain percentage of budget towards EVAWG efforts. And third, we had to really ensure that we take a multi-sectoral and multidisciplinary approach towards addressing violence against women and girls. And I think a perfect example for this is the development process of the AU Convention on Ending Violence and Girls, where we really had to consult multiple stakeholders. We are talking about traditional and religious leaders. Someone mentioned it. I think it's ambassador, young people, the private sector, journalists, UN agencies. We really had to, and CSOs, sorry to forget, but we really had to ensure that perspectives from all these groups are incorporated in the development of the convention. But also this was an opportunity for renewed commitment for all these groups to ensure that there is accelerated efforts to ending violence against women and girls. And last but not least, the AU has also prioritized evidence-based approach and putting in place mechanisms that ensure that our collective decision making is data informed, and we are happy that this is also part of Spotlight 2.0, and we are really excited to be leveraging existing tools such as the AU Gender Observatory to collect data that is going to help us to assess the impact of our existing efforts, but also allow us to reinforce some of the efforts that we will put in place. So I think really to conclude, I would say that what has allowed us to coordinate efforts at a continental level is the coordination at the highest AU leadership level, reinforcing partnerships and resource mobilization effort, putting in place a multi-sectoral and multidisciplinary approach to addressing EVAWG, and also prioritizing evidence-based approach and putting in place accountability mechanism. And I really want to end on this saying that the time to end violence against women and girls was yesterday, and our efforts will be in vain if ownership is not at a community level. So whatever efforts that we have, we can only be successful and sustained if the community is meaningfully involved and on these efforts. So I think we all need to come together to ensure that women and girls on the continent live freely and are able to enjoy their rights. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Arlette. I think it's really critical that when we're considering what will drive sustainable solutions, we're considering contextual solutions and solutions that are owned. You know, you kind of mentioned the range of stakeholders that need to be engaged, and I think our partnership with the African Union has been so essential, and what's been important for us is that we've been really understanding that for Spotlight Initiative, our role has just been to essentially just support what the AU has a vision for, and to understand that our role is really just to enable the AU to drive the vision for the continent. And that's been the most important thing that we can do, is just to take a back seat and enable the African vision to drive the African-led solutions. And I really appreciate you outlining that. We're here also to talk about financing and creative financial solutions, and I am so deeply grateful to be joined by the African Development Bank, and specifically by Ms. Lynette Gataka Meriti, Chief Gender Officer. My question for you, Lynette, is violence against women is estimated to cost 1.5 trillion worldwide. We know that multilateral development banks, including the African Development Bank, increasingly recognize the centrality of investing in addressing violence against women and girls as a means for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. How is the African Development Bank prioritizing this, and what do investments look like from your perspective?
Thank you very much. I must say, after listening to the AU and the great policy steps that they've taken, I'm feeling a bit dwarfed here. And the reason I feel dwarfed is a reason I mentioned earlier, that as a multilateral development bank, it's very rare that you have governments come to the bank and borrow for gender equality, much less for ending violence against women. So that's just the preamble I want to start with, because of the kind of instruments we have, loan instruments. However, the African Development Bank does recognize that violence against women and girls is actually a critical barrier to inclusive growth, which is one of the objectives of the bank's 10-year strategy. It's also a barrier to poverty reduction and economic growth. So at the bank, then, addressing violence against women and girls is embedded in our broader gender equality and inclusive growth agenda. We haven't focused on it as a standalone issue, but it's part and parcel of the broader gender equality agenda. So just to mention a few ways in which the bank is working, and I think some of these are baby steps, and not baby steps, but given the trend that's happening on development financing for gender equality, we might actually be able to open up spaces that we can do more through the kind of instruments that we have for financing. So the first issue I want to talk about is really the integration of GBV, and now you see I've shifted to gender-based violence because that's the language that we have used. We've integrated GBV prevention and response in Project Safeguards. The bank has an integrated safeguard system that includes risk assessment for certain projects. If the analysis shows there is likely to be risk for gender-based violence, sexual exploitation, sexual harassment, then it triggers a risk assessment. And with that risk assessment is then also a mitigation plan. So especially in the bigger infrastructure projects where that let's say have a lot of influx of male workers in communities, that have a lot of resources coming in, those are likely to trigger violence against women and girls and actually sexual exploitation. So those do trigger that kind of assessment, and we have mitigation measures that include survivor referrals and contractor codes of conduct. But if we was to stop at mitigation alone, then we are not addressing the issue. So we are also looking at integrating gender-based violence prevention across other investment projects, whether or not they trigger that risk. So it's looking at it both from a mitigation but also response area. And this is usually informed by the gender analysis that we conduct. We have seen that there's quite a lot of entry points. In a project in Kenya, for instance, a transport project, a corridor, the gender action plan includes a substantive area of interventions around GBV prevention and referral. And this for me is quite an innovative way, because these are loan resources for a transport project, but include GBV prevention. The analysis was showing that the area has a lot of child marriage, female genital mutilation, gender-based violence. And therefore the Roads Authority agreed to embed this as part of the project using loan resources. And moving forward, I think as we begin to think of the declining ODA, this is the kind of direction I would recommend that we take. Other projects might be, if we see there are risks for girls going to school because of distances, then include building a girls' dormitory at school so that they don't have to do the commute. That prevents any violence against women. So it's looking for innovative ways across different projects and see how this is done. In support to, say, whether it's transport, city transport and urban mobility projects, we're looking at safe cities, lighting in cities, in the urban infrastructure projects, safe public spaces, lighting, I think I've talked about, accessible transportation for women, and gender-sensitive urban planning. So again, that's one of the ways that we are looking at it. And of course, education and empowerment programs, including GBV prevention and life skills for girls. Now, the third way is the bank, one of the instruments that we use for financing, and I talked about this in the earlier session, is what we call the policy-based lending, which is where we put money into treasuries, into the budget that's not earmarked for any activities. These instruments are supported by institutional reforms. So we've been able to sometimes identify GBV policy-related measures. In South Africa during COVID, we were able to put a policy measure on the development of a monitoring plan for the ending violence against women and femicide. In Eswatini, we were able to dialogue and have a policy measure for the adoption of the gender policy, which included quite substantive issues around violence against women. So it's because the policy-based lending is really identifying what are the key policies that need a push in order to be adopted to advance gender equality. So this is also a way we are addressing this. I think the other area I wanted to talk about is the regional and policy level engagement. And just to share, because the bank together with ECA have the African Gender Index, where we are looking at data, and one of the areas of collection of the index is really around violence against women. What we've done in the past, not this previous iteration of the index, but one of the first ones that worked very well, was use that data to then hold policy dialogues on those thematic areas, including violence against women. Now, we did this in partnership with OECD, using their SIGI index. Now, the SIGI, the Social Institutions Gender Index, looks at the root causes. Think of an iceberg. What is below the water? What are the underlying causes of gender inequality? Our index looks at what are the outcomes of that. So we actually put the two indices together, looking at the underlying causes and the results of that, and held policy dialogues with government, with regional institutions, and getting actions that can actually be implemented. So that's another area of work we're looking at: the knowledge, the policy level engagement, and then finally the institutional support to operationalize policies where where we have the policies. Maybe we haven't been able to do that too much, but there's some work we are doing with, again, Eswatini, following the passing of the policy, the adoption of the policy, now helping the government to implement that policy through a grant initiative. Perhaps later I can talk a little bit about, maybe later, a little bit about what we might need to do given the constraints to financing for gender equality. But ultimately, violence against women, just like broader gender equality, will have to be embedded in the broader development financing. There's money in energy, and we can think about that, how we can embed work on violence against women across all those sectors where there's financing and where there's investment.
Lynette, those were really excellent examples and really concrete and inspiring to us. The Spotlight Initiative has recently entered into a partnership with the World Bank and the EU, and we're really, as you may know, we're really grappling with exactly how to institutionalize that. And so some of the examples you gave are very much kind of the path we're going toward, to really look at how to make sure that within these major investment, major infrastructure projects, we're looking at how to make the gender-based violence work integral to those spaces, to those investments as well. Now, you've all already heard from Dora, but you heard from her as a member of one of our governance spaces. And civil society plays many different roles in Spotlight Initiative. They play the role at the very high level to sit on our advisory boards and to help guide and advise on everything we do, but they also are, as I've mentioned, at the heart of our initiative, and we invest very heavily in civil society as an essential partner in delivering all that we do in Spotlight Initiative. So I'm going to go back to Dora now with some questions. So Dora, civil society, particularly women's rights organizations and women's movements, are central to Spotlight Initiative's programs, as I just said. They are at the forefront of gender equality action globally, but are chronically underfunded. How can donors ensure higher quality partnerships with civil society groups working on women's economic empowerment and to end violence against women and girls?
Thank you, Erin. I realize we have a few minutes left to our panel, so I'll just be brief. Since Spotlight 1.0 to now where we are and where we are going, civil society groups globally in all Spotlight countries came together to co-create what we felt were critical 4 messages to Spotlight, to the UN, but to also all partners that support this work. And that's what I will bear in this moment when we see that there is little to do the work, but the work has never been needed as it is needed now. So the first one is the little going the mile, the quality of programming remaining central at every level. When we fund violence prevention work, when we fund women and girls to be better equipped to do economic improvement opportunities, we fund work that is very essential but can't change in a day. So then let's go in to funding for a little longer and be very critical on what is changing while we fund. So quality of programming, time given to programs, the effort, the technical assistance given to programming is very critical. That way, each dollar goes the extra mile. Second is fund meaningfully, fund to fit for purpose. For example, we've always made the case that civil society or women's rights groups are critical, especially women's movements. Before all these issues are there, women and girls are on the ground. Networks are mobilizing from all levels, country, national, regional. Whether funding is on or not there, they will be there. Can they be central to the programming? Can we co-create together? Many times we hear, in my country I've heard, that working with movements is difficult, it's hard to measure. But many times we are not on the table to co-create how to measure the impact of women's organizing. It's never needed like it is needed now. Won't we fund it? We will fund it, but find ways of how to measure that and fund it fit for purpose. It may not be funded through the log frame. It will be funded by enabling networks of women at national level and at regional level to come together to be cohesive and find the agenda that brings money in girls' pockets, in women's pockets, that gives them a voice where it didn't have a voice. Then lastly, the fourth is that human rights is at the center of everything that women and girls are going to do better. So if donors are going to partner with us, if Spotlight is continuing to come along, continue to be sensitive on the human rights framework of the initiatives that you fund. Sometimes it is sensitive, but what makes the Spotlight model different is that you bring civil society and women rights groups on the table. Please listen to them. Co-create programs that are going to center human rights, that are going to protect rights defenders, and are going to ensure that what you fund is not also increasing backlash among issues that usually want to be put under the table. We ask for bold and courageous leadership when you fund, when you partner with women rights organizations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dora. Speaking of bold and courageous leaders, the woman sitting here, I have known her for a long time. We met actually in Uganda in 2008, yes. And I am very proud to call her my dear friend. UN Women is Spotlight's best friend. And it's not a stretch to say that Spotlight would not be nearly where we are today were it not for the partnership of UN Women and the great engagement of UN Women in this initiative. Indeed, UN Women has been central to our success. Working alongside, let me introduce Anna first for those who don't know her. I'm like, I know her. Why doesn't everybody just know her? So Ms. Anna Mutavati is the Regional Director for East and Southern Africa of UN Women. So Anna, I would like to know, so as you know, UN Women is one of 13 organizations, UN organizations who's been part of Spotlight alongside civil society and government. What are some of the most important lessons that have come from UN Women's experience working across the intersections of women's economic empowerment and ending violence against women and girls in Africa? And why do these lessons matter for decision makers?
Thank you very much, Erin. And you are right. We have grown and learned a lot together in the journey of driving transformative programs on gender-based violence on the continent and at the global level. So it's been a real pleasure and an honor to work with you. So to your question, I have 4 key messages, and I'll try and summarize like Dora did. I'm not sure that I'll succeed, but I'll do my best. So key lessons that we have learned over the years and through Spotlight. The first one is that addressing violence against women and girls requires a comprehensive, all of government and all of society approach. So I think speaker after speaker has highlighted this, and I particularly like your examples, Lynette, where you have also said that there is no sector that doesn't address or that cannot address gender-based violence or violence against women. Whether they're looking at urban planning and making cities safer for women and girls, whether you're looking at rural infrastructure and ensuring that access to clean water is close by, whether that's addressing energy needs so that women don't have to go long distances to fetch firewood and then in the process get sexually abused, or whichever sector, there is a role that that sector can play in terms of addressing violence against women and girls. So therefore, this approach of looking at violence against women or GBV in one dimension, right, that it is the work of Ministry of Gender and funding should come specifically for that, I think is outdated. And so that's a key message that we have learned. And we've also learned that in this all of government approach and all of society approach, we need to make sure that we invest in laws and policies. And I'm sure the report, as I came in, I heard you outline some of the progress that Spotlight or achievements that Spotlight has recorded in Africa. And so the laws and policies, they need to not be ambiguous. They need to be in place and then followed up with implementation and financing. That we've also learned that the multi-sectoral response that everybody has spoken about, which I will not go into, but with the multi-sectoral response, there also comes the need for coordination. Otherwise, we'll all be doing different little things and not coming together to see what we can collectively achieve. And then, of course, strengthening and investing in women, in the women's movement. This has been a key lesson for us. And secondly, we have learned that we need to institutionalize women's economic empowerment in our planning, in our budgeting, in our policies, and in our programs, both for government and for private sector, but also in our development programs as development partners and so on. So gone are the days when we would look at women's economic empowerment as a nice little thing to do where you keep women in income generating activities that are not transforming them, but rather that this needs to be part of how we do business. And I'm so happy to be emphasizing this point because it's also in line with our theme that brings us here in Kampala today, this week of the 11th Africa Regional Forum for Sustainable Development. Women's economic empowerment, both as a strategy for prevention of violence against women and girls, but also to help survivors to recover. So it's really multidimensional. So those two need to be structured in such a way that they are institutionalized in how government does business and how private sector does business. And then we follow up with very concrete investments in those areas. We have also learned, Erin and colleagues, that when we talk women's economic empowerment, it goes beyond those small-scale income-generating activities that are just recycling women in poverty. We need to also be able to address the systemic barriers to women's economic empowerment. What am I talking about? We have seen examples of Spotlight actually being the one program that directed energy towards addressing women's access to economic assets, for example, land and access to finance. We have also seen that addressing violence against women in the world of work has been something that Spotlight has driven. So really addressing those systemic barriers to women's economic empowerment. Also addressing care work through investments in recognizing and reducing and redistributing unpaid care work. So a few examples where this has happened, talking concretely now. We've seen here our host country, Uganda, through Spotlight and the support that was provided towards legal and policy reform that was looking at violence against women and women's economic empowerment in that institutionalized approach that we spoke about. So they managed to reform the succession laws to secure women's rights to own land and to inherit land. We've also seen, for example, the Africa Free Trade Protocol, which addresses or includes harassment of women who are involved in cross-border trade. Again, all of these are examples of how we can empower women economically by addressing, how we can address violence against women by economically empowering them and by addressing the systemic barriers to their economic empowerment. We've also seen a number of countries, I think 10 in our region, that have ratified the ILO Convention on Harassment in the World of Work, again ensuring that women can fully participate in the world of work without fear of violence. And last but not least is the example in Rwanda, where the One Stop Center has combined economic reintegration with other services. And so all of these are examples that institutionalize women's economic empowerment as a strategy for prevention and for response. And it does address what we are talking about in this forum today. So the key message that I would like to leave with our policymakers, or why do these examples and lessons learned matter, is one, they need to know, and we hope that this gets carried into the conversation, into the main document, outcome document for this forum. One is that standalone women's economic empowerment programs or violence against women programs do not work. We really need to have them integrated. And then, and when we have them in different silos like that, we limit the impact. Secondly, the cost of violence is high compared with the cost of investment in ending violence against women. So we really need to invest in preventing violence. And because when we wait to then respond, the cost will be much higher. So I think those are the two key messages, why they need to know these lessons and why they need to apply them as part of what we are recommending here. Thank you, Erin and Beth.
Thank you, Anna. So my dearest panelists, you'll be as aware of the time as I am, and you'll see that our amazing RC has entered to give closing remarks. We had a second question for the panelists that was actually, it's an incredibly important question about kind of what we can do in this moment to increase economic opportunities. I am still really keen to get their responses to this question, and I'm kind of in my mind thinking of all the ways we can still get this. And you know, Spotlight Initiative has an amazing social media presence, and we take these great videos of our partners. And so what I'm going to try to do is, while we're here, I want to get a video of each of you answering that question, and we're going to put it on our social media. And apologies to my wonderful communications colleagues on the line for making extra work for you. But I think this is a way that we can still get this great insights from all of you, make sure the world gets this great insight from all of you without going too much over time. Speaking of amazing colleagues who are online, can we just quickly show, I think we've actually had like 20 more colleagues join us online in the meantime. Can we just quickly show all the people who've joined us online? And if people are able to just put their videos on quickly and just wave hello. Some of the same faces and some new faces, I think. Yeah, oh, hi Suni. Oh, hi everyone. Oh my gosh. Hi everyone. Yeah, oh, it's so great to see everyone. All right, great. Well, with that, I want to give a really warm thank you to all of our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause, please. Okay, you're welcome to stay up here. I'm going to actually now welcome the resident coordinator for Uganda to the podium, Leonard Zulu, to give our closing remarks.
Thank you very much for the welcome and also the privilege and opportunity to make the closing remarks for this very important side event. And I must say, I'm very pleased that it worked out because I think it was the last one to be arranged. So there was a lot of running and toing and froing, and we are very happy with the organizers, the Economic Commission for Africa, the government of Uganda for really accommodating us and having this important session. So I will stand on the protocols that were already mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I assume, so that I don't make a very long speech at the end. But I recognize all my colleagues that have come all the way from New York, so thank you very much. And I hope you're not jet lagged. And all the others that are joining us from around the region, and also the very hardworking colleagues who work on the Spotlight Initiative in Uganda and other countries around the world. As part of the definition of the United Nations Common Agenda, the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, stated, and I quote, "I urge member states and other stakeholders to accelerate the eradication of violence against women and girls as a priority, which the United Nations will support, backed by a global campaign to eliminate any social norm that tolerates, excuses, or overlooks violence against women and girls, in line with Target 5.2 of the Sustainable Development Goals. This will also be central to the multi-stakeholder effort to significantly reduce all forms of violence worldwide." I close quotations. In a world where there is a contestation of ideas and a patriarchal pushback against feminist gains, in a world where there is increasing competition for stretched resources to support increasingly complex social development challenges, in a world where we are facing increasing natural disasters, political tensions, armed conflicts, and the forced displacement of peoples, the real and present danger of not just increased violence against women and girls, but also the normalization of the violations of women's rights to safety and security, bodily integrity, and even life becomes more poignant. According to the Gender Equality Index report, which includes data on reproductive health, employment, and empowerment, 27 of the 30 countries in the world that exhibit equitable gender indices are in Africa. It will be dangerous for us as the collective of humanity to turn a blind eye when the data demands that we see that 35.5% of women in sub-Saharan Africa suffer from intimate partner violence, with 71% of it occurring in rural areas due to lower socioeconomic status and limited education. It will be irresponsible for us to hide behind resource scarcity. Our forefathers and foremothers on this beautiful African continent upheld the values of Ubuntu, Mulamu, Uhuru, Ubantu that dictated the importance of mutual respect as a foundation for social stability. In my home country of Zimbabwe, the word for rape is the same as that for murder, and incest is taboo, as is assaulting your mother. I am sure other countries have vestiges of similar values. It is a shame that today, only 22 out of 54 African countries have laws on gender-based violence. I ask, how then shall we end the rampant impunity for violence against women and girls? The Secretary General rolled out the Spotlight Initiative as a fund to demonstrate that the United Nations can deliver as one. And indeed, I'm proud to say that in Uganda we do this. And I'm proud to say that in Uganda, the Spotlight Initiative is actually hosted in the resident coordinator's office as a neutral party to all the implementation dynamics that can occur when we are operationalizing initiatives. The initiative succeeded in proving that coordinated approaches can and do enhance efficiencies in the delivery of benefits to those we serve. And I saw this for myself when I went up in Karamoja and interacted with some of the beneficiaries of the Spotlight Initiative. We cannot afford to lose momentum. The UN Global Policy Environment provides adequate guidance through the SDGs acceleration measures that include the 6 transitions. The regional frameworks referenced in the discussions today and the local iterations of the Sustainable Development Cooperation frameworks, through which the United Nations family aligns itself to the priorities of the national development plans. And I can attest to this because in Uganda here, we are working on the second cooperation framework, 2026 to 2030. And the Spotlight Initiative is strongly featured there, and issues related to stopping violence against women and girls are also reflected in there because it's got a very strong human rights focus. Even though we are experiencing the ripple effects of the geopolitical dynamics taking place today globally, we must adjust and turn this crisis into an opportunity to start doing things differently, more effectively and more efficiently. The future of development coordination is one where all actors, government, the United Nations, development partners, commit to delivering as one. And there's the typical saying that we say when we are faced with a crisis is we have to do more with less. But I think here we have to do more because we are united and have got a common effort. The African continent must increasingly become proactive and invest time, human and financial resources in strengthening coordination for more efficient delivery and optimal utilization of the limited available resources. I am excited to be part of the next iteration of the Spotlight Initiative and look forward to more such approaches being adopted across the continent. Let us join hands to end all forms of violence against women, girls, men, boys, and children on this continent. Before I declare the Spotlight Initiative side event closed, I would like to also underline that this is the time to also underline and cherish our common values of humanity and to look at things and advance causes that have been tested through time, the cause of non-discrimination, gender equality, strength in diversity, and inclusion in everything that we do. I think if we forget these because of what's happening today, I think we would have lost our moral compass and also moved away from the purposes and principles of the United Nations. And it is for that reason that I'm always proud to stand in front of my colleagues when we are talking about women and girls and say that I am very proud to be a feminist and to be part of the women's movement on this continent. Thank you very much. I declare the Spotlight Initiative closed. The event, not the initiative.
Thank you,
Yeah,
RC.
so you're listening, yeah?
Thank you,
So the
RC.
Spotlight Initiative
Event.
event only.
Very important distinction.
Only the the spotlight.
Thank
I can't
you.
close the initiative.
No, it's only getting started.
It's only getting started. So thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, RC. As you all are packing up, we're going to show a very short video just to much of what the RC just talked about. It's the story of Lillian. It's the story of Uganda. Let's play the video. But thank you. There will be no further closing after the video. So as the video plays, if you need to go, I know we've kept you late, but thank you again and really grateful for all of your time tonight.
Kora mu Kinombe nali nimbonabona muno. Ninkora kuruga Nyenkyakara mpaka Rwebajo. Ninkole 15. Zali zitakusobora kurolera na familia yange. Hati omuseja wange omulimo bugwahoireho yatandika kunsaba sente za waragi. Obuna yangaga yanteraga. Nkeralikira muno omwana. Mu museja narugayo natandika Chamani akeija mu Kinombe nasera abakazi abakubonabona twafuna omugisa twayege byalani n'ebisoke kukora saluni cyali kiroto cyange era nyonka komamu kora isoke nkega penso twist dread kandi natekamo mutima gwange gwona bakanyegesa no kutandika business. Emyezi yokubanza ya business abantu bakatugaya baito twasibiraho abantu babiri bakastoma beija na business yatandika kukura. Ninyamba abakazi abarabire mu butabanguko bwa maka nitukora nabo mu saluni nibeha mu sente zo kurolera abana babo. Nikisemeza hati sente ninzifuna kuraba mu mikono yange. Sazino nisobora kwegura ebyokulya ntakusabiriza museje ekyakubere nikinteka mbuzibu. Sazino nyina kasente kange ninyesobora